Thank you very much. I first of all would like to thank Professor Che for the kind invitation to join you today. I also would like to thank Professor Che and Maya Kim for the leadership for bringing us, can you hear me? For the leadership to bring us together to the World Bioinnovation Forum. I just would like to add a few thoughts about key trends I see, and that's mostly from an innovation angle. But if I can have the next slide, please. By walking through those trends, I think all of them have an element in themselves that they foster more collaboration, because unique capabilities start to evolve at different places, and the crosstalk between those capabilities, I think, will be transformational. Now, the first theme and trend I would like to talk about is the emergence of new bioplatform companies and how they potentially will be disruptive. And that, of course, complements a long journey we have in biopharmaceutical research, which takes us about 100 years back, where we all started with small molecules coming from the dye industry and then complemented it with natural products to build a platform capability around small molecule drug discovery. And that has served us extremely well over 100 years. And it's still a platform which contributes to about 60% of new drug approvals. So it has a long history. It moves today more like a glacier with small evolutions, but still we make progress now. More recently, we saw, for instance, the prodrugs as a new approach to go after new biology we could not before with small molecules. So small molecules keep expanding the scope they have in terms of innovation. But of course, because it's a long history, it's also a mature science. Now, next to it, we saw, starting Milstein-Köhler Nobel Prize in the mid-70s, antibodies emerge. And then it took about 15 years for first niche applications. But before antibodies really made it in a significant way to patients, it took about 25 years. So that was a real second platform which emerged. And thereafter, we saw the evolution of RNA therapeutics. siRNA really triggered it with a Nobel Prize in 2006. And now first products made it to the patient. Took about 15 to 20 years. So we see an acceleration of platforms evolving. And that even further accelerated now with the pandemic, where we saw a new platform, messenger RNA, actually bringing a product within a time frame no one of us believed beginning of 2020 that we would have a vaccine within a year reaching patients. But a new platform where investment started around 2010 actually brought a capability to make this happen. So those vaccines, of course, were not developed with 1 year, but there was a long investment over a decade. But still, we saw now a new capability emerge within a decade and made it to hundreds of millions of patients today within a short time frame. So clear acceleration, but of course there is more to come. We see gene therapy, we see stem cells, we see gene editing companies emerging. And I think, I spoke about collaboration. Typically, those new companies emerge out of venture-backed biopharma companies, which really try and invest into wide space to explore completely novel innovation we have not been thinking about. And very rarely those platforms emerge in pharma companies. And I believe largely because pharma companies are integrated to the patient, to the market, and have a therapy area focus, but much less so a focus to develop the next bio-innovation platforms. But that, of course, invites to new collaboration models between those emerging bioplatform companies and pharma, bringing more sense of therapy area focus. And at this cross-section, of course, new innovation opportunities emerge. The second trend, which I've put down here, is we also see an acceleration in our understanding of disease biology. And I just want to mention one key element here, which I think will be very transformational, is the learning on a single cell level about biology. So with single cell seq and alike technologies, we start to build a system level understanding of the cell and how disease processes are driven. So I do think this will be transformational in terms of our understanding of human disease processes. But then, of course, at this intersection between new bioplatform capabilities and our understanding of disease biology, we start to paint a much wider canvas in terms of how we can innovate at this intersection. And I think this will make innovation processes way more complex in terms of the amount of knowledge, expertise has to be present when thinking about new projects. But it also creates a much wider canvas to innovate in unique, novel ways to find therapeutics for diseases we cannot treat today. And to have a very reflective thinking, what platform and technology platform is most suitable to address a certain biological question. Now, linked to it is, of course, translational science, that discovery becomes much more human-centered. That we actually really move away from animal models and use those technologies to understand human disease and have pathways and research projects much more focused on human biology than we did this in the past. And that, I think, will in particular be important in diseases where the immune system plays a role, where humans are quite different, or neurological diseases where humans are quite different from animal species. So clearly human-centered discovery will be transformational and important in this context. Now, if we do one more click here, then I think there was a trend over the last 2 years with the pandemic, which I have painted here as the fast and slow pandemics. And what do I mean by this? So COVID clearly was a fast pandemic. It came out of the blue. It was hitting us. We were not so well prepared as we had hoped for. We got in some way lucky that we could develop a vaccine faster than many of us anticipated into 20, but still we were not so well prepared. But the other part, which I think we learned in the pandemic, was that certain subsegments of the population in the United States and in other countries were way more vulnerable to this virus, where mortality was much increased in, for instance, the obese subpopulation, in patients suffering from diabetes or cardiovascular disease. So it started to put a spotlight on the question, what is actually the population health? And to what extent actually makes us this more vulnerable and led to a tragedy of many human lives lost. So the question, not only to how to be better prepared for fast pandemics and the next virus which may hit us, but how we also can improve preventive health has become way more center stage. So the question in particular in the chronic disease space, diabetes, cardiovascular disease, obesity, how can we actually prevent those diseases has become a center stage question with a need to think about how actually can we think about diseases not from a sick care perspective, but from a preventive angle. Now, if we make one more click, I do think sometimes underestimated, but the whole area of device technology and delivery solutions will be paramount, especially as we move into new platforms. Many of those modalities are today not available as an oral treatment, but of course we can think about completely novel next generation devices which could enable this. Like at the same time also delivering some of those platforms to specific organs and tissues will be vitally important to actually gain broader access of those technologies for certain diseases. So for instance, now RNA-based therapeutics, of course, we found a wonderful way to deliver it to the liver. But still the journey is evolving. How can we more broadly across the body deliver those new modalities? So this clearly, in my mind, will be transformation to make progress in those areas. Now, if we take one more click, and we saw this also from what Bernd Stowaser presented. artificial intelligence, machine learning, data science will have a significant impact along the value chain. There is an impact in terms of how we design molecules. And in some ways, that's an extension of what we did in rational drug design. But at the same time, we also saw now problems being solved by machine learning technologies like the protein folding question, where tremendous progress has been made, which nobody of us would have believed is possible 10 years ago. That the folding problem now seems to be in reach to predict. But we also see integration of AI machine learning into how we understand biological data in unique ways. So that actually systems biology can now become actually much more of a reality, that we start thinking about diseases less so on a target by target base, like we have done for a long time now since the 80s, to going back to what we actually did in the 60s, where we had whole animal screen and to find drugs, so that we now can go back to a system level approach, but with a complete understanding of all the processes in the cell. And of course, lastly, there is this insight we will also gain from data science in terms of patient segmentation and transferring early biology insights into the patient and the biomarker discovery linked to it. So machine learning, AI, data science will be a key enabler along the whole value chain. And so the last comment I would like to make before closing here is my brief remarks, if we do one more click, is that digital health solutions will have a significant impact, where I just want to mention two areas which I think will be very important. One is the area of patient adherence. So for many diseases, we have quite good medication, but the adherence is still not at the level where it could be. And so digital health solutions, if they help patients to better adhere to a treatment, can have a lasting impact on the overall population health. The second area, I think, and Ben spoke to it, the enormous cost of clinical trials. The digital health solutions have clearly a potential to help us revolutionize how we will conduct clinical trials in the future. And of course, those capabilities to develop it will not sit typically in a pharma companies. They sit in startups, they come out of the tech industry. So collaboration also here will be key to develop those solutions. I stop here. That was meant as brief commentaries of key trends I'm seeing right now happening.
Dr. Stilz, you mentioned new modality, and Dr. Stilz also mentioned new approaches, some of the new approaches. My question to you is, which new approach are you and your company focusing on?
Now, as I say, there is,
stem cell genomics, whatever,
Yeah, so we internally have built a stem cell platform, where we of course have a 20-25 year history in terms of developing differentiated stems from embryonic stem cells to develop protocols to differentiate them. It was initially, focused on type 1 diabetes, but now we feel like we have a GMP grade stem cell line and approaches which we then venture out to go more broadly into other disease areas. So that is one of the few examples where I would say, a platform capability has been developed, in this case in Novo Nordisk, over a 25-year period. Then you probably have seen that we acquired, or are in the process of acquiring Dicerna and siRNA platform. Clearly, we believe that has significant potential to innovate precision medicine-like approach to interfere with processes within the cell. But we also look into gene therapy approaches, gene editing approaches. So we believe this will be a really, really important field.
Thank you.
You're welcome.